You are listening to the Beyond the High Road podcast with Shelby Milford, episode number 90. Stay tuned. Hey, y'all. Just before the episode, I just wanted to make a couple quick announcements. One is that, as always, I'll be live in a Facebook group, the private Facebook group, at noon Eastern time on Friday, again, as usual. And then also, I am going to start the TikTok lives. I just haven't. I've been so busy with all the other work stuff that I really need to spend the time this weekend and really figure out how to do it, which is probably going to take me 5 minutes. Anyway, no excuses. I am going to be doing that. I don't think any of you probably even remember me saying before, it's not a big deal. But yeah, also, I noticed that while I was doing the extensive editing for this episode, and sorry because it's super long, but I noticed something really interesting and I thought I would share it with you, is that I don't even know if this is a thing. Like, I'm just coming on and doing this now, like recording this pretty much right before posting it on Wednesday. So I haven't really gone and Googled this, but I knew this was going to be the topic. I noticed myself, just because I was thinking about being in a functional freeze, flipping into at least having the symptoms of a functional freeze while I was recording, which I thought was really, really interesting. And I don't know, maybe it's a coincidence. Maybe I was just having some moments, 2 hours of moments, but I do think that words and thought are so powerful, and that our mind picks up on all of it. Just because I was thinking about being back in that functional freeze state, my body actually reverted back there. And you'll see, or you'll hear in the episode, I think it's got great information, but sometimes you'll notice that my transitions are pretty choppy, and that is because during it, and I don't know that I actually articulated this as one of the symptoms, but I think the way that I see it showing up for me when I am at a functional freeze is that I'm all over the place, right? That my thoughts are scattered, and I did kind of mention it because I was talking about foggy brained. Basically, what I'm saying is my transitions are a little harsh. I don't know if that's the right word, but as long as you have the patience to keep up with this episode, then I think that you'll really get something out of it. In the end of this episode, I actually go into talking about how our children are experiencing this very thing, and it might help you to sort of reframe how you're thinking about their experience and your experience of them. I'll leave it, but just know that it is worth it to stay through, or maybe cut it up into 2 separate listening sessions. But it is worth it to stay through if you notice that you are having problems with energy and not being able to get your tasks done, and any of the other symptoms that are associated with being in prolonged freeze state. The second half of the episode is a little less choppy, and maybe you guys won't even notice it. I just noticed it when I was editing today. So that's all. Just a interesting little tidbit. Not that I needed to make the episode any longer than it already is. Oh, and what I forgot to mention too is that later on, I talk about getting misdiagnosed as being depressed. And the biggest difference is that depression is a chemical. It's coming from the inside, internal, where functional freeze or freeze mode altogether comes from an external circumstance, comes from a traumatic event that happened. So depression is internal, and functional freeze or freeze is as a direct result of an external factor. Upward. Y'all have a wonderful week and enjoy the episode. Hey, you guys. So today we're going to be talking about functional freeze. Functional freeze mode, I have a feeling, is where a lot of you guys that are listening to this, either you have experienced it or you might actually be experiencing it right at this moment. As you probably know, the functions of a stress response system is fight, flight, freeze, fawn, right? All the F's. There's also, there's flying here. So if you see me looking at elsewhere, that's what it is. So you've got your sympathetic nervous system that controls your fight or flight. Also in fawn, I believe it's the energy creating, even dopamine is part of that too, but like the adrenaline, the cortisol, the endorphins that the brain releases during stressful, dangerous situations, what the body is deeming as dangerous situations. We need both in all of our daily tasks, right? When we're going throughout our day, we want the go in the morning. When we wake up, our body releases cortisol. It releases all of the chemicals that cause us to motivate, to go do things, right? So we do need sort of sympathetic nervous system in order to feel and to get excited about things. You know, it's really what's behind any sort of motivation or drive to do anything that you're doing, right? And then the parasympathetic nervous system is there to help you to digest and relax, to counteract the go, go, go chemicals. Okay. And so when we're in a freeze mode, like out in the wild, you always hear the comparison, like a deer is getting ready to prey, is being chased down by a predator. When the predator, I see this with my cat all the time, unfortunately, he will go and run down a bunny, and the bunny will, I'm sorry, you guys, but it's nature, I guess. The bunny will just collapse, right? Not because it's dead, but because it has gone into freeze mode where it sort of dissociates from its mental, emotional state inside, right? Being present. The freeze response is there to protect you in the moment and so that you don't feel pain. I believe that when you're in a freeze response in an acute danger situation, that your body releases a natural opioid in order to relax you, numb you both physically and emotionally, right? Mentally, dissociate you so that you don't feel the pain of whatever might be coming at you. So functional freeze mode is just as it sounds. It's your body's way, an extended version of your body's way of protecting you. It's an action executed by your stress response system. I'm not going to get into all the unnecessary lingo about it and science of it. There's plenty of information out there for you guys to look further into it. What I would like to talk about is how it might be showing up for you. And then, of course, how you can deal with it, how you can move yourself through to the other side of functional freeze and start reconnecting with yourself and with the world, really, in a more genuine, authentic way. And so that you can start to feel better. Because when I go through some of the symptoms, chances are you're going to be relating to a lot of them. I guess I was probably aware of this, but it really hit me today that I think I've probably been in a functional state of freeze ever since my brother when I was 6 years old. I think that the rest of my life I led in a fawn, freeze, fawn. And so I think that it actually explains a lot of how I got into relationships and why I sort of butterflied around throughout my life. And I've always used that comparison with the butterfly because I was constantly feeling like that. I want to say agitated feeling, but like that anxious, like, gotta do something, gotta move, feel it. That was literally, I was the person, and I'm sharing this with you, not to just tell you all about me, but maybe this is going on with you too, or maybe you have one or two of the same symptoms. So that's why I'm sharing it all with you. But I was also the person that bumped into a lot of door jams, hip checked a lot of counters. I still do, but it's much less than I used to. I used to go through my life like full speed ahead, right? Completely disconnected from myself though. Like if you were to ask me what I was feeling, some years ago, I'd be like, what are you talking about? I don't know. I'm doing fine. Right. And blah, 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 blah. Or maybe I would tell you if I was angry or one of those surface emotions that didn't get to the root of anything. Yeah, I might have told you felt angry or agitated for sure. That was one of the ones that I used, but I was full speed ahead, always going somewhere, no plan ever, you know? So, I do believe that dysfunctional state of freeze for me, has had both, because I still shift in and out of it today. Been going on for decades, probably about 4 decades without even realizing it. And that is usually what happens with us. If you've had any sort of childhood trauma and you felt like, and this is similar to what our children are experiencing now, but if you were abused as a child or you were in a position where you had to hide your true emotions, you felt like you weren't able or it wasn't appropriate to express your true self, chances are you, as a child, made it about you, right? Oh, it must be me. It's not them that's the problem. So you had to change yourself in order to fit what you thought that they needed back then. I don't tell you any of this stuff so that we can go back and like drone on about our childhood. But I think the first step to healing is becoming aware so that we can find understanding, right? And then once we understand, oh, okay, might be go way far back. Some of these things, some of these discoveries with me, I'm only just now like putting together the dots. For me, where I started my work was not in my childhood, although I did go to therapy, like with a counselor, with a few different counselors for lengths of time, several different times. But I think that when I really started to get the majority of my work done, it was when I started this work that I teach you guys, working with my thoughts and my emotions and how my thoughts create the results that I have in my life. That's where most of my work really got done. And it wasn't in looking back and trying to explain my childhood, right? Because back when I started, what I really needed was to get out of thinking and droning on and blaming other people in my life, like for my life, blaming my parents for the upbringing that I had and all that. So I really needed to focus on what I was capable of doing at the time. And that's what I teach you guys, right? But once you've got a little bit of healing under your belt and you feel like you're starting to be able to manage your mind, it is really useful. This is the way that I did it anyway. You can do it in any order you want. It just really depends on you, and what works for you. I don't think that there's one right way to do anything. I think that for me, I'm always wanting to learn and evolve, and I love incorporating new ways, ideas, and methods, into what I've already put into action in my life, up until now. But what I was just saying is that I needed to, in the beginning, I didn't want to go back, keep droning on about my past. That was actually keeping me in that extended freeze response. I needed to get moving because the freeze mode, you're in that put the brakes on everything and you've got like the low energy chemicals being released from your brain. In order to counter that, I needed to get myself into action, right? And work on what I could control and move forward. And now, of course, that I've got the healing under my belt, now I can go back and kind of make sense of what was happening with me as a child. And because I now have the tools, the mental, emotional tools, and the emotional confidence, if that's a thing, and trust with myself, capabilities to bring myself through and out of any quote unquote emotional danger by going back into my past. Now I'm fully capable of doing that, just being here at my house by myself if I wanted to, and wouldn't need to be under the supervision of a counselor or somebody else around me, right? I don't feel any danger or worry about my emotional stability now. So that's why I really, really love the way that I'm teaching you guys, throughout all these episodes, is really to find the things that you can control now And like, let's say if you're just finding out that you have been alienated, you're just realizing there's a term for it, and you're seeing the negative effects on your life and how you're putting the dots together, whatever, but you're just exhausted and taxed and feeling like you have no energy and no drive to do any of the work or do anything really, because most of your energy has been spent and maybe still is being spent on trying to save your children from the situation or manage your own mind and emotions around the fact that they're there. I mean, there's so much that goes on from when you learn, like you're still going through court. But I think basically what I'm saying is that if you have been feeling like you're labeling it as being clinically depressed or just depressed in general, you have high anxiety, you notice that you can't motivate yourself. You just want to go to sleep a lot. You don't want to take a shower, or you have trouble. Like it's just like feels so hard for you, difficult to do such a simple thing like take a shower every day. Or when you get out of the shower, you just dread getting yourself dressed, put together, hair blow dried, getting clothes on to go outdoors. If that seems like near impossible or just like so much effort, and for why, if you procrastinate or have difficulty starting or completing the tasks that are in front of you, if you find yourself canceling plans, this was a huge one for me, is there would be texts, loads of texts that I wouldn't respond to. Like sometimes the simplest text. Now I say this, and just the other day, I put my phone down on Sunday. I put it down for basically a 24-hour period, and I picked it up and there were 33 texts on there on Monday mid-morning. But it was different. It's just because I just put my phone down and I got so much accomplished, you guys. So much accomplished. It's amazing what you can do when you put your phone down and stop. This is another thing that we do when we're in functional freeze, is we will be like scrolling mindlessly, shopping mindlessly. Maybe your TV's on while you're scrolling and you're just like la-di-da. And even more, is TV on scrolling while you're laying in bed. If this happens and you're just feeling numb, all of these are signs of being in a functional freeze. Self-isolation, if you work outside of the house and you just can't wait to get home and shut the doors and shut everybody out, right? Disconnect, canceling plans, avoiding calls, or even listening to your voicemails. You're just like, I just can't deal with it. These are, I mean, I can't even tell you. I still actually, it's not terrible now, but I do have to talk myself into, and I think it's just become a brain habit too, of calling people back, you know? I think I shared this with you guys in another like earlier episode last year sometime, where it took me so much to call even my parents back, I mean, weeks sometimes. It just felt like so much to do it. Like I was like scaling a building. It just seemed like so much effort. The other things you might be feeling is numbness and tingling in your limbs. Also, dizziness and vertigo, lightheadedness. This was a problem. I went to the doctors back when I was living in the house in the hill. And it's back when they were doing all the testing on me. But anytime I turned my head to the side, everything sort of spun. It was like everything was catching up to my eyes, right? And I believe now that this was because I was still in a very active form of prolonged freeze. Does that make sense? Yeah. So my parasympathetic nervous system was like putting the brakes on. It's called dorsal vagal shutdown. Basically, it's your prolonged state of freeze. Shallow or irregular breathing, to me, I felt like there was like an elephant standing on my chest, where I had to take deep breaths. It felt so much better to expand my chest and hold the breaths in, because I felt like I wasn't getting enough air or oxygen. And I remember back then, like, am I going to have a heart attack? Like I would Google, it just seemed off, like just very heavy here. And I didn't feel like I was like breathless. Like it just felt like I had to take in so much more oxygen. This is also a sign that you are in extended form of freeze. Okay. difficulty starting tasks. I think I mentioned obviously low energy, weakened immune system is another one. Two, I think this actually just goes into like if you experience prolonged trauma and your body is used to releasing cortisol. Cortisol is actually an inflammatory. It draws all of the water from the surface of your skin. It draws everything close to your belly to try to store that water for any sort of emergency, right? I haven't done the research on this, but it would make sense that because your body was releasing cortisol for so long, like extended periods of time like that, and because there's some dysregulation with your nervous system, that this would also be the case even in your prolonged state of freeze. So the body will store all the water, bracing itself for catastrophe, just like when we stock up for water before a hurricane or whatever kind of natural disaster you might have in your area. The body does the same thing. And so when the water is drawn away from the surface of the skin, well, obviously you look more dehydrated, but you can also develop things like psoriasis. You never had psoriasis before, and all of a sudden now you have psoriasis, or eczema, acne even, and rosacea. Difficulty getting out of bed. This is huge for all of us as alienated parents. I cannot think of one client in the last 6 years, whatever it's been, that hasn't had this symptom, right? Of feeling exhausted, don't want to get out of bed, or want to get back into bed, 2 or 3 hours into the day or any time really during the day. You could just crawl right back in bed and you just want to lay there because you feel like you have zero energy. Like you could go into a slumber into like a deep hibernation, right? And it seems like that's just all you want to do. You just want to crawl to your bed. That's like all you have the energy for. I remember being back in Texas, and that was another one of my symptoms, was this extreme fatigue, to the point where what was so weird for me was it was always when I got in my car and started driving, like when I needed to be the most alert, right? Even at the most alert, but that's the time when I definitely, it was important for me to stay awake. But the second that I got in my car and I would roll the windows down, my eyes desperately just wanted to close. Like there were times I would almost fall asleep, like my eyes, and I'd be like nodding off while I was driving. It was intense fatigue. And so because of that too, you've got this intense fatigue. And when you're in freeze mode, your body is shutting down all of your non-essential functions. And so that is why we have the brain fog, right? Because we've dissociated with ourselves. Your body doesn't know what's danger, what's not. And you've experienced it for so long and been in and out of dangerous situations. Your body is so out of whack that it's treating everything as such, right? So we end up having brain fog, inability to make future plans, right? We just can't even think about the future like I was talking about before. And your memory is probably piss poor, feeling constantly overwhelmed or like frozen, stuck. Like you can't think, you can't conceptualize. Like there's like ideas that you have in your head, fragments of ideas, but you can't articulate them or even try to write them all down because it's just too exhausting. And maybe you can't even fully develop the concept that you have going on in your head, even though you might know it very well. So basically, it is a difficulty and almost an inability to do pretty much anything except for go to sleep or veg out, numb out in front of a TV with a remote or whatever. That's at its worst. At its best, I guess, you can actually function in your everyday and go, complete all your tasks and live your life, probably not even knowing that you are completely disconnected from yourself. You're completely disconnected from your emotions and what is even happening in your world. You don't sort of feel like you're out of your own body and nothing really phases you and you're just numb to everything. A lot of people dissociate after having prolonged periods of, traumatic event after traumatic event over and over. And then with us too, when we've been through so much pain, the body just decides, listen, we can't connect with our emotions anymore because it's too painful. That's the thought we have somewhere in us that it's too painful. So we're just going to completely disconnect from all of that. And so you just go through life going through the motions. This happens a lot for people even after like an unexpected death in the family too. They're just going through the motions. I can imagine it's what somebody might feel like on high doses of lithium, just very numb to the world and nothing is up or down, right? You don't really know what you're feeling because you're just not really present in your body. So there's not the spectrum of emotions. So yeah, functional freeze is there's like, I guess it goes from being in freeze mode and an extended period of freeze mode to a functional every day. You're still going through the motions in your life, but nothing seems like it's worth it. A lot of times we'll get mixed up with and misdiagnosed with depression. And so if you have been on anxiety medications, depression medications, and nothing seems to actually work, like none of the prescriptions, Wellbutrin or whatever it is that you're taking isn't working, this could very well be why. Because it has really nothing to do with any sort of depression. It's because you are in this prolonged, maybe for years and years and years and years and years, like me, state of freeze mode. It's an iteration of it, I guess. Being that I'm almost positive that most of us have experienced this or are experiencing this at this very moment, it would be helpful for you if you want to stop feeling like this. Like the downfalls to staying in this state is that you feel like you're not even living, you're existing, right? You're just going through the motions of this life, paying your bills, maybe if you're doing that. But if you're pretty functional and to the outside world, you seem to be doing just fine. You're managing, maybe you look strong, and even from your family's perspective. But on the inside, you just feel like, what's the point to all this? I don't think that there's a downside to trying out some of the solutions I'm going to offer and any solutions you might find for being in a functional freeze state, okay? Prolonged freeze state. So, I mean, it can't hurt to try. And none of the solutions that I'm going to offer anyway are anything that takes up too much time. Definitely not, don't have to cost you any money, really. The solutions I'm offering you won't cost you anything. And then, of course, if you wanted to jumpstart that, then of course you could always look to going to counseling. You could do somatic healing is another way of moving your body along and getting there a little faster, right? Learning some somatic exercises. But yeah, so there's hope for you yet, is basically what I'm saying. Your life is not doomed to being, is this as good as it's going to get? Like if you just feel like life is just, you're existing, you're not doomed to that forever if you don't want to be. Okay. That's the whole message today, is that, I didn't know about all of the, like the ringing in the ears and the vertigo, the dizziness, the shallow breathing, right? All of that stuff. I actually, up until maybe, very recently, the last year or so, I didn't know that those were associated with being in functional freeze. And so maybe after me explaining this, you're like, oh yeah, maybe I am actually in that place. Then it's great news, because you have a lot more power over your own happiness and your life than you think. That's the thing, is I think we come from this place where we feel like we have no power, and like that are, especially depending on how far out you are from this whole alienation situation going on in your life and how active you are in your child's life at this moment, and how active your ex or whoever's alienating your children from you, how active they are right now in the alienation strategies. But I can feel so overwhelming and feel like they're always going to be controlling my life. They've always got their hands on something, and they're always like, they're so obsessed with me that no matter what I do, no matter what move I make, and this is what could be keeping you, what I will venture to say, this is probably what is keeping you in that freeze mode. So if you've been feeling like you're not at liberty to make a move, your basic needs aren't being met because you feel like they are a threat to you. If you do go and get a new job, if you do put yourself out there in some way, if you wanted to work for yourself, or whatever it might be. I get that because that's where I was. I felt like it was a fact that my ex and his wife were controlling me, monitoring my every move, who I spoke with, who I didn't, who my friends were, which members of my family even talked to me because there was a lot of meddling. You know what I'm saying? I was painfully aware that I couldn't control how they acted, painfully aware that I couldn't control that. And that was the actual crux of that was my whole problem. And the way I was seeing it was like, yeah, I know I can't control them. And that's what's so upsetting right now because they are controlling me. So how are they doing this to me, but I can't do anything back? There's no reciprocation. I felt like no matter what I did, no matter where I turned, which way I tried to go, that they were there to cut me off. And so this can cause you to get into that more active form of freeze. Makes you feel like you're not safe, even in your own home. You're not safe in your own yard or to be on the phone with somebody that you normally before felt very safe talking with, right? It can start to cause you to be like the hyper arousal to kick in. Functional freeze is usually described as being tired and wired, right? Being exhausted, like you cannot move your finger, like your eyes want to shut, your body wants to curl up into literally curl up into fetal position and just go to sleep, right? Or you sleep like with your hands, arms like tucked in like a T-Rex, also a very protective posture for your body. So although you're you may be getting things done in your daily life, you may be able to pull yourself together. Like I said, it's sort of a spectrum, whether or not you're able to pull yourself together and get into the shower and go and get your stuff done. It may take you a little longer and it may be more of a fight. Maybe you're still getting the stuff done. It just feels like you've got lead feet and lead hands and a lead everything in order to go do it. You're doing it. It's just exhausting. But you also have this heightened anxiety that you feel distant from. It feels like, for me anyway, it felt like there was like this anxiety with like a heavy sponge over it. If that makes sense, like a heavy, full sponge that was like plopped on top of it at all times. And it feels like a little ornery, a little like, ooh, right? For a long time there. And I remember always looking this up, and I swear either Google has gotten better at pulling up information or more information has been, I'm sure more information is being put on the web all the time, but just even 4, 5, 6 years ago, I remember Googling this like obsessively, really, which of course is another one of those like anxious sort of behaviors. But when any noise, I could be in like smack in public, like with people all around me. And if a noise or a person walked in front of me that I wasn't expecting, even though I was in public and probably should be expecting it, I would shriek. I was so easily startled. It was noticeable anytime if anybody walked up behind me and said hello, I would jump. I mean, literally my heart would go into my throat. I was in a heightened state of like, even though exhausted, many things startled me, scared the bejesus out of me. Sometimes there was nothing there. I remember being in my garage a lot because I was back then doing a lot of woodworking, but I remember seeing like shadows that weren't there, things in the corner of my eye that weren't there, a dark shadow, like something that seemed like threatening. And I think that this is a direct result of the prolonged stress and trauma and danger situations that I was in. But I do think that that's part of being in the functional state of freeze, not freeze so much, but functional state. It's like that anxiety with the sponge on top. And that did eventually mostly go away. Actually, now that I'm saying that, I was in Home Depot or something like that a few weeks back, and somebody, again, I'm in public, people could probably just walk up right next to me at any time. And somebody did while I was looking at like outlet thingies, and I scared the bejesus out of me. So I guess it still creeps up here and there, but whatever. So I could actually, there's a lot to address in talking about functional freeze state. And I think in the future, I'm going to do another episode on this. because I believe it warrants it. This topic is definitely not finished for me, but because given the fact that I've already talked as much as I have, I want to be able to offer you solutions and not keep you hanging for a part two, at least to help you in the meantime. So yeah, we're gonna do another episode probably sometime soon. But having said that, if you feel like you might be going through or in a state of functional freeze right now, there are things that you can do right now to help you to emerge from it. When we're in a state of freeze, it's our dorsal vagal nerve. Shuts your body down, shuts your brain down, and all the non-essential functions, pretty much. Maybe you're able to function for every day. This turned into a coping mechanism that has become your body's default way, right? But just because it's default now doesn't mean that you can't pull yourself out of it with some very simple actions. So because it's your dorsal vagal nerve, in order to get out of it, we have to counteract that. And the way that we do that is with the ventral vagal. Ventral vagal nerve is responsible for your socialization, your desire to be around people, to connect with yourself and with others. When your dorsal vagal nerve is activated, your brain is going to tell you that you need to isolate at all costs, right? That you need to go home, that you need to not answer these people back, that you need to unfriend whoever, that you need to go back to bed, that you need more sleep, that you need more time, that you need, that. It's going to try to keep you close in survival mode and not doing the things, or it'll tell you that you can't get your tasks done. It's too much for you right now. You need to wait, or, anytime you feel and you notice yourself sort of shutting in like that, it could be as a result of being in this prolonged state. So what we need to do is activate the ventral vagal, okay? Your brain is going to come up with all of the very convincing reasons why you should not do whatever it is that in the moment your body is probably telling you that you're going to die from doing, right? It may not give you that language, but it'll be like, that is not a good idea. That seems like it's going to be uncomfortable. And so I just want to prepare you even before I give you the simple tasks to do so that you can prepare yourself in the moment for some responses to that part of your brain when it's telling you that all of these things that I'm going to tell you, all the solutions are a bad idea. Just the way that I do it is like, oh yeah, I knew that I was going to say that. I knew that this part of me, I have names. I actually call, sounds funny when I'm saying it to you guys, but I talk to that part of me like I'm having a conversation with another person, but I know it's me, So I usually say we or I, like, we knew that this was going to happen. We knew that you were going to come up with this and you were going to tell me that this wasn't a good idea and that we should not do that and we should go to sleep. So just come up with a response for it in the moment. Expect that your brain is going to do this to you. And if you expect it, then you'll have an easier time moving through it. If you don't expect it, you'll want to listen to it. Okay, that's it. So there are a couple of ways that I like to get myself out of being in this state. Oh, and what I was saying, holy shit, Shelby. What I was saying is that I was in that prolonged state, right, of being in this freeze mode, this protective mode for my entire life. So it would make sense that since I just learned how to sort of bring myself out of it, that I would kind of go in and out of that window, right, of going back, I hate the word slipping, like when I'm using it in this context, because it's like, feels like it's out of my control. And I know for a fact that it is well within my control if I know. So first off, the first step is to, before I give you the solutions, is to have compassion for yourself, right? Just be understanding of the fact that you are there. There's nothing wrong with you, right? Like I used to be like, what is wrong with you? Why can't you just get up? This is such a common practice for those of us who have been in an extended period of freeze mode, right? We're like, God, what the fuck is wrong with me? Why can't you just be like everybody else? Why can't they've had stuff going on in their life? Why do you have to be like, you've gotten nothing done and now you're losing time? and it's going to be too late for you to get anything done. I mean, this is like in the scope of my, entire life. And then also like in the moment when I'm talking about just the daily tasks. So it's everything. But I would beat myself up. And I just want to, again, before you even go to doing the solutions, just know that will come up for you, probably likely come up for you. And just to offer yourself some compassion and some grace in these moments, because it makes sense. This is your body's way of protecting you. It really has nothing to do with your personality or your makeup, as far as like your genes, right? Your DNA. I mean, it does on the larger scale, like it's a human experience, right? This is the human body's way of coping and keeping you safe. So there's nothing that you have done wrong, and you are doing the best that you can. Now that if you're just learning that this is what has been going on with you, now you can offer yourself the grace, the compassion, and then you can employ these little actions in order to continually tease yourself out of this place. Okay? So there's nothing wrong with you. So you're going to want to fight. You want to, as much as possible, you don't need to go stick yourself out in a group of people because that might be too much, but find one person, one or two people that you really trust. And if you can, share your feelings with them, share your experience, even just what's going on about this. Hey, this is what's going on. I don't need you to solve this or anything. I just want to share with you, and I want to be able to connect with you. So that's one of the ways. Breathing. I usually breathe. You can do square breathing, or people call it box breathing, right? Where you imagine in your mind a square and you breathe. So you could do 6, 8. Some people just do 3 counts of breathing, inhaling for 6 counts, and imagine drawing a line up for the square, and then holding your breath for 6 counts and drawing the line across, right, horizontally, and then exhaling for 6 counts, right, and drawing the line downwards, and then inhaling and exhaling that 6 counts, going horizontally again to complete that. So box breathing. Also, I think there's like a 7, what is it? 4, 7, that's what it is. 4, 7, 8 breathing. Anyway, you could look it all up. Breathing exercises, as long as you are holding your breath for equal or longer amount than you are inhaling. So you inhale 1, 2, 3, 4, hold for 6 or 7, whatever it is, count, hold it in, expanding your chest, which will also help if you have the symptoms like I was describing earlier. And then you want to exhale for much longer than your inhale, twice as long, ideally. Okay? So there's that. Breathing exercises are fantastic to also connect your mind with the rest of your body. And that is what we deal with when we're going through this prolonged state of freeze, is that we've dissociated with ourselves. So the breath is always a way to reconnect, recenter yourself to yourself. Okay, here's a way that I actually learned from, I feel like it was either like one of the message boards, like Reddit, or I don't think it was a Facebook post. It was a couple years ago. I read this technique or this method that girl was talking about. It was in the CPTSD or PTSD group on Reddit. And I don't even know if it was a girl, but this person was talking about what their counselor would lead them through in order to reconnect them to their own body when they were stuck in freeze mode, right? And what they would do is they would stand up, and it feels really awkward. I have been doing this now since. Wait, before I even tell you this one, another thing, I'm sure you've heard me talk about in the episodes before, that I have dance parties in my house all the time. Dance parties are amazing for you gaining some energy and getting yourself out of freeze mode, and will lift you up. It's amazing, the change in your internal environment, right? And your energy levels and your thinking and all of it. When you just turn on some really fun music and just start dancing, amazing what it'll do for you. So that is like, if I could be the poster child for dance parties in your house, I would be. They're seriously the best the best medicine. Laughter, speaking of the best medicine, laughter, also a great way. There's a type of yoga that laughter yoga. Basically, that's what you do is you teach yourself how to laugh, and it's a big laugh out loud, right? And it also helps you to connect with your inner self and your emotions, and can be a very emotional experience, actually. So that is another one. Somatic exercises as well, somatic healing exercises. Hip openers, always amazing for you. But the last one is, so the one that I was reading on Reddit is the counselor had her, and I reenact this. I've been doing this for, I don't know, ever since I read it. The counselor had the person get up and just start shaking their bodies. Like, you can shake however you want, but like I make it end up being like sort of rhythmic, but start shaking your body and listen to your body and move it the way that it wants to move. I was reminding myself of it today while doing this, and I was just tired. I don't think that I was in freeze mode or anything, but I got up and I started doing it, and I'm watching these two dogs, and they looked at me like I was a Martian. It was the craziest. I don't know if you can see them. Are they behind me? Oh yeah. Well, you can put now. I don't know if you can see. Anyway, they're one is there. I don't know where the other one is, but they were looking at me like I was crazy. So you shake and just do whatever, let your body take you, but like you really want to move. And then after 60 seconds or so, you stop and you balance on one foot for 15 or 30 seconds. And then you go and you balance on the other foot. And then you repeat that whole process 3 times. Start shaking, listen to your body, and just move around. Almost like I kind of imagine it to be in the way that I do it is like almost like, think like tribal dancing. That's my iteration of it anyway. And it's amazing. Your spirits will lift almost instantly. It's anyway, that's been my experience. Mostly too, because you know how goofy it looks. You know how goofy it is. It feels, but it helps you. It's actually can be an emotional experience as well, because once you start reconnecting like your movement with your inner self, you can start to reconnect with the emotions that you thought you had lost. If you do feel like that numbness and like, what's the point? You feel like you're just disconnected with the world and like you're just going through the motions. This can be like a returning to self, right? And it can cause you to feel some emotions. And just know too that when that does happen, it's okay. You're going to be okay. The reason that we've gone into this freeze mode and dissociated, like I think it's probably common sense, right? Just like if we're in acute threat of something happening, right? Acute danger, we leave our body, if you will, so that we don't feel, right? So that we are numb and don't feel the physical pain. And the same thing with when we're in this, have gone through any sort of psychological abuse, emotional, what we've gone through with alienation, right? With being alienated from our children, the psychological trauma, the emotional, mental space that we've been in, the body wants to disconnect from that. Your central nervous system is like, no, we can't handle this. So you learned either during the alienation, or my bet is earlier on in childhood, you learned that experiencing emotion, connecting with that emotion was too much, right? It's dangerous. It's like doing that. You didn't feel safe doing it in the place you were in when it happened. Like if you were a child and for whatever reason, no matter what kind of abuse might have been going on, you didn't feel able and safe enough to express your true feelings and your true self in the moment or thereafter, right? Maybe like somebody abused you, but you felt like you couldn't tell your parents because in doing that, it might have cost you their love, right? Like it wasn't appropriate to tell them, or you would have been blamed or whatever. And so you had to hide that away. And so from that point on, you could have been in functional freeze, kind of like how I think that it was happening with me, where it wasn't safe for me to say anything to anybody. I didn't know how to express that. So as children, that is the only option we have, we think anyway, because we don't have the option to run away or to fight the situation because we're children, we're little, And so what can we do? Our system just jumps right over fight, flight, and we go straight to freeze. And so if we learned that as a child and we had trauma after trauma or carried the one trauma for so long and felt like we needed to hide away, then it may be your default to go straight into freeze now as an adult, you know? So my point of telling you that is, well, two things come up is because one, and what I was initially getting at is that it may feel the idea of connecting with your emotions may feel scary. But remember that emotions are just vibrations that are happening inside of our bodies. That's all an emotion is. It's the story that we attached to the emotion, to the experience of the emotion that really causes us the mental pain and discomfort. But if we allow for the mental part to just be, it's just a story. It can't hurt us. It's nothing. We're in a safe place right now as we're experiencing this emotion. Hopefully that you are in a safe place, that you're not in any physical danger. Then your nervous system can start to settle down and start to feel safe. You just have to reinforce the reality of your safeness, of your safehood, right? That you're not actually in physical danger. It's like the difference between when you're watching a movie, a scary movie. We've talked about this before, right? It's probably common knowledge, but like when you're watching a scary movie and something scary is happening, same thing happening to you, it's two entirely different things. One, you're not in danger. The other one, you are in, maybe grave danger if it was happening to you, right? But your nervous system has no idea the difference. It sees it. It thinks it's actually happening to you. And that's why scary movies, some people love them because they release the endorphins and all of the feelings that you get when you're scared. Some people like that. Some people don't. I do not like that. But this is why your body feels like it's happening to you at the moment. But the other point I was going to make is that I think coming from last week's episode where we were talking about, if you are maybe in the place right now, I think many of us go through this where we're angry at our kids or we're just feeling like fed up with the fact that they are still rejecting us and why don't they understand and why don't they respond? And how I was talking about last week. Then maybe that this will give you a little bit more insight into what they're experiencing now and maybe a little bit more compassion because in their situation, being if they are over at the person who's alienating your kids from you, if they're over there most of the time, they've had to they're switching in and out from freeze, fawn, right? And in that freeze mode, they have learned to disconnect with their feelings of love for you. They've had to do that because they have not felt safe to express that. They got that message from whenever this started. The other parent would withhold love. They wouldn't speak to them. They would either express it verbally or non-verbally, their displeasure and disapproval of speaking about you in a loving way, right? We all know that as one of the strategies. But what they learned from oftentimes very young ages is that they could not be themselves. They could not express themselves as they are in their true feelings. So they have learned to dissociate from their feelings, right? And that is essentially a form of freeze mode. They're in an emotional freeze. Have to move away, separate themselves from their emotions because those emotions are bad and they won't serve us here in this house. So, and after so long, it becomes this prolonged state because they aren't permitted to even grieve. Like we, as animals, I think when we lose a relationship, even a friendship, maybe, friendship is broken for whatever reason, you guys don't speak to each other anymore. There's a grieving process that we go through. Even animals out in the wild, grieving process that we go through when we are not in daily connection with a person that we love and that we once looked to guidance for and all the things, right? But because they can't it's this unsupported, disenfranchised grief that they are going through. They had to disconnect from their emotions. So likely and I'm not saying this to upset you in any way, but more, I guess, just to remind you, that if you are feeling impatient with them or, wishing that they would just finally understand or learn or stop accusing you or whatever it is. This is why. This is like the body's response to this. They were not safe. And if you can identify with that in your own experience from when you felt like you couldn't be yourself or express or feel your own emotions, like that those emotions were bad. As children, I think it's like 80% of children, if something happens and we don't feel safe to share our true emotions as children, made it about our own selves and not about the other person. It's like either stranger danger, right? Those people are bad. They don't support us. Or we make it about ourselves. And if it's coming from the people that love us, we make it about ourselves. So anyway, just so, I guess hopefully it'll help you to have a sense of compassion for what they might be going through. And also you provide your own self with the compassion and grace for your experience growing up. And, we just don't often consider whatever we did go through in our past. Our mind, our stories, our view of the world is like a map of all of our experiences. All of the rules and ideas and beliefs that you have are all come from somewhere. Our brain is like this mental map of how the world works that we kind of put together, right? Based on our experiences throughout our history, each of our histories. All of the things that you do, the frustrating idiosyncrasies that you have, the ways that maybe you're not getting ahead the way that you want to, or that you are excelling in other areas, it's all explainable. The human body, the nervous system, all of our functions, nothing that goes on with us is unexplainable and comes from nowhere. It's just out of nowhere. The symptom that we're experiencing is just a fluke. No, it's really all explainable. And so much of the time when the doctors are telling you that there is no explanation like they were for me, it's probably most likely, this is my opinion, is that it has to do with some sort of dissociation from yourself, from somewhere in your history. You do not have to go and sit and dig through all the trauma of your life in order to explain your life now, but just have compassion for yourself. An ongoing mindset to adopt about yourself is that this is all explainable. There's a reason that I have these symptoms or that I want to shut down in certain situations or that I'm getting more sleep than maybe had planned on getting. There's reasons you're tired. There's always an explanation for it. And it's not just because you're falling short, So give yourself the grace to pull out of the functional freeze mode. You must, it just made me think of Seinfeld episode where Costanza decided he was going to do the opposite of everything that he did because he just had such bad luck in like dating and like his life by listening to his first instinct. So he thought, oh, well, if I just do the opposite of what I really want to do, then everything will be fine. And is that when he was like doing Art Vandelay or whatever? Anyway, that just reminded me of it. But yeah, when you're trying to get out of dorsal vagal shutdown, extended freeze, you want to do the opposite of that, opposite of what you're tempted to do, and move your body. Move your body when you feel like jumping in bed. Have dance parties, shake your body, breathing exercise, get back in touch with just hearing your breath. Also, there's something called VU breathing, which is, you look it up. I don't have enough time. I've been talking, but VU breathing is another way to reconnect with yourself and stimulate your ventral vagus nerve. Okay. And reconnect with yourself. Okay. All right. So that's enough. There are plenty of other ways you can do this. And more specific, you can get into like somatic healing exercises, hip opening exercises. Yoga is really helpful for opening up the hips, which is also where we store a lot of our trauma, as well as up in the neck, in the back, in the joints. Okay. All right. I got to stop because I've been talking for a very long time. I'm going to go. All right, guys. I'll see you next week.